Good morning and welcome to Live Without Limits. Transform your thinking to redesign your life. I'm your host, Davida Shensky, and I'm so grateful that you're here today. We're exploring a quiet force shaping our emotions, relationships, and self image, the inner child, what it is, why it matters, and how to protect it. This is something that we all have that we don't always think about because that inner child is your little child that suffers early on and remembers, and that's what you're taking care of. So, whether this idea is familiar or brand new, my promise is simple. By the end of this episode, you'll understand yourself deeper with clarity and compassion. Your inner child isn't just a metaphor, it's a real emotional part of you that carries early memories, needs, fears, and joys. When we learn to protect that part, everything can change. So settle in. Let's journey within. Your inner child is the younger emotional self shaped by early experiences. It holds your earliest memories. What made you feel safe or afraid? How love was expressed or withheld? And how your needs were met or dismissed. That part of you that doesn't disappear. When you grow up, it lives in the subconscious, influencing how you think, react, connect, and love. Think of how a child feels: curious, playful, vulnerable, sensitive, joyful, and easily hurt. Those qualities still exist in you. So when you hear your inner child, don't think childish. Think foundational. That part of you that learned what love is supposed to feel like and what it isn't. Now, let me quickly tell you a story that I grew up with a disability at a time when society didn't even recognize its disability community. And I grew up in a toxic family. Neither one of my parents knew how to show affection or to express love. For them, their marriage was a marriage of convenience. My mother wanted financial security. My father needed someone that would be a hostess and a cook. And that's exactly what they got in their relationship. They showed no affection to each other, and they showed no affection to their children. And my mother, who was the main caregiver, did nothing but criticize. Tell you what you did wrong. If you tried to make you bad or do something, all she did was criticize. It wasn't done right. You know, that's your foundation. That's how you learn to treat other people. That's why there are so many divorces out of that generation, because many of them came from homes. Because if you look back, and I know I tend to like to read some of these romance novels, but if you look at the Victorian era, that's when you had your lords and your ladies, and many of the nobility married from their own class to have children, but they never married for true love. And that's where your romance novels kind of give you a little bit of the history, even though they're basically about finding true love and true affection. That's the era where it was never found. And that's why you see so many, and I've said this, and I know I'm repeating myself, but true love is when two people have affection for each other and truly care and want to see the other su- succeed and don't feel the competition with them for achieving anything. That they look at it as a team effort. So why it's not childish with your emotional foundation from birth to about age 7, we're absorbing what relationships feel like. How do people respond when I'm upset? Are my needs welcome or resented? Is affection steady or conditional? Are emotions safe or shut down? And I can tell you this much, that as a child, when I grew up, because society didn't recognize this disability community, my peers did not understand what I had, how to react to me, how to treat me. And I felt isolated and alone, and I would go home and cry because I was hurting. And I had a mother that would sit there and say, "Why are you crying? You have no reason to cry." But guess what? I did, because I was hurting. And later on, many years later, when I said that when I told my mother that, she gets like, "How could you say that?" But the difference is that she didn't even understand it. She didn't know how to take care of her own needs. She surely as hell did not know how to take care of her children's needs. And she couldn't understand why. And that's where ignorance comes in. And this is why we have to understand how to take care of our inner child and keep ourselves safe so that we don't end up in relationships where we're repeating the same behaviors. These moments from our emotional blueprint that you carry into adulthood long before you had words, your body stored, felt the truths, not logical ones. That's why your inner child is a foundation, not a flaw. It's the ground that your adult life stands on. The house metaphor. You can repaint the walls of your life, but if the foundation is cracked, you'll feel it. Care for the foundation, and the whole house stabilizes. Basically, you have to learn how to protect your child and learn how to communicate. The sad part is that so many of us don't know how to express what we're feeling. We don't know how how to protect ourselves. This is why you still hear a lot of abuse going on. And it's also why that you hear more of it going on than you hear from the past, because in the past, many times, people did not understand what the inner child is, how to take care of that inner child, because no childhood is perfect. Loving homes can still have tender spots. Wounds often come from emotional neglect or inconsistency. Be strong, don't cry messages, chronic criticism or comparison, bullying or instability, being the nature or the nurture child, managing others' emotions, not being allowed anger or sadness or trauma or conflict. These experiences plant beliefs like I'm not safe, my needs don't matter, love must be earned. If I speak up, I'll be punished. And when that wounded child grows up, those beliefs still shape how we move. And understanding this is so important because understanding what that wounded child really is what can help you change and grow to become what you really want it to be. So, what I want to get into a little bit here is what the wounded child syndrome refers to is the lasting emotional and psychological impact of childhood trauma, neglect, or abuse, manifesting in adults as chronic low self-esteem, fear, people pleasing, difficulty with boundaries, trust issues, and emotional reactivity stemming from unmet needs and unsafe experiences that create persistent feelings from and helping you to feel and consistently feel as though you're unsafe or unworthy. And these inner wounds, often rooted in early life experiences, affect adult relationships, mental health, and behaviors, leading to patterns of perfectionism, self sabotage, or unhealthy mechanisms. What I want to talk a little bit about is the common signs of the inner child, because I think these are so important. Low self esteem and guilt, feeling inadequate, unworthy, or excessively guilty, especially when setting boundaries, people pleasing, difficulty saying no, fear of abandonment, or avoiding conflict to keep others happy, relationship struggles, trust issues, fear of intimacy, or tolerating unhealthy dynamics, emotional dysregulation, overly strong reactions to small triggers, anxiety, or chronic emptiness, self criticism, a harsh inner critic, or intense negative self talk, unhealthy coping, addiction, self sabotage, or compulsive behaviors, feeling unsafe, a persistent sense that the world is dangerous, stemming from childhood hypervigilances. Now, let's talk a little bit about what causes it, because then we're going to get into the healing approach of the inner child work. So, childhood trauma, such as abuse, neglect, severe illness, unmet emotional needs, love, safety, validation. And these are the three things that every child needs growing up. And if you don't experience it, it's it's an unmet emotional need that therefore as an adult, what happens? You tend to look for relationships that you are going to get that emotional need met. Excessive pressure or unrealistic expectations that sometimes parents want to relive their childhood through their own children, and then they expect them to achieve heights that they expected in themselves that they never achieved. Now, let's talk a little bit about the healing approach. Acknowledge and validate. Recognize your inner child's pain and experiences. Identity triggers. Understand what brings back old feelings. Journaling and self reflection. Write about the past events and current feelings. Therapy, professional help like trauma informed therapy, is crucial for deep healing. Self compassion, reparent yourself with kindness and understanding. And that's what we need to understand. Now, let's quickly get into what are the 7 key signs of the inner child. They're having big feelings about small things, self sabotaging behaviors, unhealthy coping mechanisms, a difficult relationship with your family. And this is something I've always had because I've had a family that they don't know how to do anything but criticize. And I've learned the best way to be around them is to not be around them at all because they don't know how to change and don't want to change. And that's the sad part is that we all need to learn how to make those changes in our lives. Self-criticism and low self-esteem, relationship issues, mental, physical, and emotional issues. Now, let's look at how the wounds show up in adulthood and the triggers. Core filters. It's too much. Not enough people have asking for help is weak. Survival habits. People pleasing, perfectionism, hyper independence, withdrawing, attachment styles, anxious, cling, avoidance, distance, or codependency, over responsibility, needs confusion, not knowing what you need, guilt for asking, or chronic self abundance, chronic shame, difficulty receiving compliments, imposter feelings, expecting rejection, familiar pain, choosing what's known, even if unhealthy, over what's safe or unfamiliar. Here's the triggers, the emotional time machines, a look, a tone, or delay transports your nervous system back to an old wound. Your adult brain may understand, but your inner child feels. That's why reactions can feel bigger than the moment. Feedback, adult, the thanks, I'll improve. Inner child, I'm a failure. Partner, needs space. The adult, okay, later. The inner child says, I'm being abandoned. Someone sets a boundary. The adult in you says, got it. The inner child says, you don't love me. So the best way to deal with that is to reframe. The triggers aren't failures, they're flags, they're whispers. This hurt me once. Please don't ignore me again. Healing begins when your adult self steps in. I hear you. You're safe now. I'm here. Over time, reactions soften as trust builds. So, understanding where we're coming from and how this all works together and helping you deal with it. So, who is the inner child? There is a scene in the film Rocket Man where Elton John attends a support group and is visited in his imagination by various figures from his childhood. Finally, his younger self arrives and Elton leans down to hug him. This represents a huge turning point for the star, as it is a sign that he is finally coming to terms with his past. In psychological terms, what this scene represents is that his adult and child parts have integrated and are no longer split. In other words, Elton John is no longer rejecting the part of himself that is small and scared, that young Reggie White, who always felt like an outsider. Instead, he is accepting this younger self and finally showing him love. So, how that wounded child affects you in the present. Many of our core ideas about the world are actually formed before the age of 8, yet this is not a rational or logical stage. In fact, from birth until age 7, we have an ego-centric view of the world. In other words, we believe everything that happens in our immediate environment is somehow linked to us or caused by us. We aren't yet fully aware that other people, including our parents, are separate beings from their own lives. For instance, if a child's parents are divorcing, then they may blame themselves and think of it because they are naughty rather than understanding that the grown-ups are having relationship problems. Likewise, if a child's mother is acting distant, then they could believe it's because they are unlovable rather than because she is stressed. So if you had difficult experience in childhood, such as abuse, abandonment, or neglect, you might have felt that you were somehow at fault and deserving of it. And even if you only have vague memories of these experiences, they could still be affecting you deeply to this day. We often talk about how you learn to have relationships based on what happens in the home because you see your parents' relationship, and that's the kind of relationship you expect to have. Understanding this helps you to deal with it, and as you get older, to understand how to relate to what other people are thinking and how to take it. Now, I want to talk about this. I've already talked about the 7 signs, but I want to talk about the 4 ways to heal your inner child. A relationship with your inner child is like in any other kind of relationship. It takes time for trust to grow. It can also be intimidating and scary to reconnect to your inner self, as you might suddenly start feeling long buried pain, grief, and anger. But it can also be very rewarding as you can finally let go of old emotions, feel safer in the world, and reconnect with more spontaneous and playful parts of yourself. Get to know your inner child. Notice how you speak to the more vulnerable part of you and see if you can get to know that aspect of yourself better. Speak kindly to your inner child regularly. Ideally, aim to spend a little bit of time with your inner child each day, listening to what's on their mind, checking in with how they are feeling in their body, helping them to name any emotions. Connect with a good therapist. As mentioned, the inner child work can be painful and unsettling, so that you may want to do it with an expert who shows compassion and support. Return to play, imagination, and creativity. Did you love painting as a child, playing the recorder, getting muddy, climbing trees, flying kites, reading comics? They then try to reconnect with one of those old passions and set aside time in the week to do so, finding ways to bring play, discovery, and creating back into your little and your life can help you to connect with your inner child in a light-hearted way. You can't protect what you ignore. Try a daily 2-minute check in. How do I feel? What do I need? What would feel kind right now? Journaling, meditation, gentle visualization, or even writing to your younger self. Reparent, often the care that you need then. You're safe. I'm listening. Your feelings matter. In action, set and keep boundaries that have harmful dynamics. Self compassion. Perfection isn't perfect. Kindness is. It's okay to make mistakes. I did the best I could. I can try again safely. Design for safety. Craft your inputs and people. Rest on purpose. Limit time with those who belittle, dismiss, or destabilize you. Seek warmth, respect, and steadiness. Daily micro habits that compound. Morning check-in for 2 minutes. Name one feeling plus one need. One boundary honored today. 10 calming breaths before responding. 10 minutes of play or joy. Walk, doodle, music, baking. Affirmations. I am safe. I am loved. My feelings matter. These things and small choices repeated rewire your nervous system from vigilance to safety. The inner message becomes I am here. I won't abandon you. Now, let's look at a final reflection. Your inner child is still with you, waiting to be seen and hoping to feel safe. You don't have to rewrite the past. You can Show up now and say, I'm here. I will protect you. That simple promise kept daily heals from the inside out. Before we go, I got a question for your journal that you need to think about. What does your inner child need from you today? And what's one small way that you'll provide it? If this episode helped you, share it with a friend and leave a review. It truly supports the show. For deeper work, grab your free inner child daily checklist sheet and affirmation cards and plan for that future. And remember, you're the only one that can take care of your inner child and learn to overcome some of the things that we talked about and face up to them and build stronger relationships. Because once you learn to love yourself, then it's easy to love others.